You know, we've all seen them, that pothole that seems to live on your street forever, or the footpath that's slowly being reclaimed by nature. But what if the solution wasn't about waiting for someone else to fix it? Today, we're diving into the road warden scheme, a really smart idea that puts the power to fix these everyday problems right back where it belongs, in the hands of the community. It's a familiar feeling, right? You spot a nasty pothole on your daily drive or a sign that's totally covered by weeds, and you think, someone should really sort that out. But then weeks go by, maybe even months, and nothing happens. It can be super frustrating, and it really makes you wonder, why isn't this getting fixed? Well, that feeling of frustration really boils down to one simple thing: a gap. It's the gap between what a community sees and needs every single day and what a local council can actually realistically get done. And here's the heart of that disconnect. Our expectation is pretty straightforward. You see a small problem, you report it, it gets fixed quickly. But the reality for councils, like Devon County Council in this case, is that they are under enormous financial and resource pressure. And here's the real kicker. A lot of those smaller jobs we notice, they're no longer the council's legal responsibility. They have to focus their limited budget on major safety repairs, which means all that other stuff, the smaller stuff, just gets pushed further and further down the list. So what if there was a way to bridge that gap, to connect the community's desire for action with the council's need for help? Well, that's exactly where this innovative partnership comes into play. Let's talk about the solution, the road warden scheme. So what is this scheme exactly? Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a formal handshake between the county council and the local community. It's an official agreement that gives town and parish councils the green light to organize volunteers and tackle those minor but important jobs on public roads themselves. And this right here is a fundamental shift in mindset. You know, the old way was totally passive. You'd report a problem, cross your fingers, and just wait. But this new way, it's all about action. It's about empowering communities with the training, the support, and the official go-ahead to just get on and solve these problems themselves. And the payoff for communities that step up and get involved? It's huge. This isn't just about patching a few potholes. It's about building a more resilient, capable, and proud community from the ground up. And just look at how well thought out these benefits are. It's not just, go ahead, do the work. No, communities get real, tangible support. They get the official authority to do these jobs. And this is crucial. They're covered by the council's third-party insurance. Volunteers get access to free professional training. And maybe the best part, they get priority access to a community enhancement fund for bigger projects down the line. It's a complete package. And listen, this isn't just a nice idea on paper. Here's a quote from an actual community road warden who's doing the work. They said, "Before the scheme, we'd report issues and wait. Now, with the training and support, we just get on with it. And I love this part. It brings people together and keeps our roads in better shape." That says it all, doesn't it? It's about community as much as it is about maintenance. Okay, so this sounds great, but you're probably wondering, how does a community actually get this off the ground? Let's break down the practical steps involved. The process to get started is actually really clear and straightforward. Step 1, the local town or parish council officially signs up for the scheme. Then, they nominate someone to be the road warden. That's the key person who acts as the link. That warden then helps recruit local volunteers who get all the necessary training. And finally, with guidance from the council, the team gets to work and starts making a visible difference. Now, here is a really, really important point to make. This scheme is for minor works. Any major safety repairs, we're talking the big, urgent stuff, that absolutely remains the full responsibility of the county council. This partnership is specifically designed to empower communities to handle those smaller quality-of-life tasks. And the range of what counts as minor work is actually pretty wide. We're talking about things like filling those non-critical potholes, clearing weeds from pavements, cleaning road signs so you can actually read them, and clearing out blocked drainage grates. It can even include things like cutting grass for better visibility, repairing those classic old finger posts, and even managing roadside verges to encourage wildlife. These are all the little things that together make a place feel looked after. So after hearing all this, you might be thinking, this sounds amazing. How can my community get involved? Well, the good news is the path to joining is very clear. How you get started really depends on who you are. If you're representing a town or parish council, your first step is to get in touch with Devon County Council directly, using the details you see here. But if you're an individual who just wants to roll up your sleeves and help out,
Your first port of call is your local parish or town council. Just give them a shout and ask if they're already part of the scheme or if they'd be interested in joining.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Take a look around your own neighborhood, your own village or town. With the right support and a bit of that amazing community spirit, just imagine, what could you fix?
All right, welcome. You know that feeling, right? You're driving along and you have to swerve to miss a pothole, thinking, ugh, I wish someone would just fix that. Well, if that sounds familiar, you're going to love this. We're taking a look at what's happening over in Devon, England, where they've come up with a really clever solution to this super common problem. Let's get right into it. No, seriously, just take a second and think about that. What if it wasn't about just complaining or filing a report online? What if you and your neighbors were actually empowered to go out and fix those annoying little things on your street? It might sound a little out there, but believe it or not, it's actually happening. Okay, so first, let's just lay out the problem. We all know potholes are a pain, but for local governments, or councils, as they're called in the UK, they are a massive headache. Look, they have to prioritize, right? And that usually means only the huge, really dangerous stuff gets fixed. All those smaller ones, they just sit there and get worse. So what's at the heart of this? It's not that the councils don't want to fix things. The real issue is money. Budgets from the central government have been shrinking, and that forces them to make some really tough calls. When it comes down to it, the cash just isn't there for what they call minor work. And this is a really important point. The council is still 100% on the hook for the big, dangerous, safety-critical repairs. This whole volunteer program isn't about replacing the council, not at all. It's about filling a very specific gap. It's about empowering people to tackle all that other stuff, the small potholes, the weeds, cleaning the signs, the things that would otherwise just get left behind. So what do you do about a problem like that? Well, Devon County Council could have just said, sorry, no money, but they didn't. Instead, they actually worked with their communities and came up with something pretty brilliant. It's called the Community Road Warden Scheme. And listen, this is not just some informal thing where people go out with shovels. No way. This is a properly structured program. It's a formal partnership that gives local folks the official training and, crucially, the authority to look after their own neighborhoods. So how does it actually work? Well, it's pretty straightforward. First, the council provides free and really important safety training. Then, the road wardens, who are just local residents, remember, they act as the eyes and ears, figuring out what needs doing. And finally, the trained volunteers get the green light to go and do the work. It's a real team effort. And we're not just talking about potholes here. The wardens get to tackle a whole bunch of stuff that makes their communities better. We're talking clearing weeds, cutting grass, cleaning up road signs, even doing some small drainage jobs. It's a whole package. Now, of course, an idea can sound great on paper, but the real question is, does it actually work? So before going all in, Devon decided to run a pilot program to put the whole thing to the test. They started small, keeping it focused. The trial ran in just 5 towns and parishes, a manageable size to really see how things went. And the results from that small test group? Get this, the volunteers fixed almost 200 minor potholes. Think about that. That's 200 daily annoyances, 200 potential flat tires, gone. All fixed by local people for their own community. A huge reason this worked so well was because they made it easy. Volunteers weren't dealing with complicated, heavy machinery. They used this really simple-to-use repair material called Instamac. It's basically designed so that pretty much anyone can use it effectively. And I think this quote from Councillor Stuart Hughes really nails it. What's so cool is that he's not just a council official, he's also a road warden himself. He says the whole idea actually came from the communities asking to do more, and he's seen with his own eyes just how impressive the results have been. Okay, so the pilot was a huge success. The next logical step? It was time to roll this out across the whole county. This wasn't just an experiment anymore. This was becoming the real deal. And they're putting their money where their mouth is. Devon County Council has committed over £100,000 to grow the scheme. That money goes towards all the materials and equipment the new warden groups need to get the job done. And it looks like the idea is really catching fire. You've got 20 parishes already on board with 76 trained reps out there working. But check this out. The demand is so high, there's already a waiting list of 33 more people for the next training. It's clear that communities are loving this. But this isn't just the council dumping work on people. They have a whole support system in place. all the volunteers get free official safety training. It's called Chapter 8 training. The council even provides third-party liability insurance. And maybe the best part? They're actually listening, and they're making the rules and guidelines simpler based on what the wardens are telling them. So what's the big picture here? Is this just a feel-good story about one county in England? Or could this be something bigger? Let's zoom out a bit and think about the national potential for an idea like this. Yeah, this is definitely not happening in a bubble. The UK's Department for Transport is paying attention. Other local authorities all over the country are watching this, trying to see if they can do something similar. And for Devon itself, they're hoping that by being so proactive, they might actually get more national funding for their roads down the line. So at the end of the day, this isn't about making volunteers do the council's work for free. It's about creating a blueprint for a whole new kind of partnership. It's a super local solution where the government gives citizens the power to make their own neighborhoods better. And that's a model that could work just about anywhere, right? And that brings us full circle, right back to that first question. After seeing how it works in Devon, with the proper training, the support from the council, and that sense of community pride, the idea of your neighbors fixing your street, well, it doesn't sound so crazy anymore, does it? It just sounds really smart. So I'll leave you with that thought. Could it work where you live?
Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, I've got a fantastic story for you. It's all about how a few small communities got together, faced a really common frustration, and came up with a simple, frankly brilliant solution. It's an amazing look at how powerful local action can be. So let's just start with something I think we've all wondered about. You know when you're driving or just walking around your own town and you see all the little things, a pothole that's been there forever, a street sign you can barely read anymore. Who's actually supposed to fix all that? It kind of feels like it's nobody's job, right?
Well, that exact feeling, that frustration, is exactly where our story kicks off today. We're going to head over to Devon, in England, to take a look at a very specific, very local problem that a few small towns were dealing with.
And at the very heart of this story are 4 parish councils. We're talking about Bearfairs, Golworthy, Horabridge, and Dartmoor Forest. Keep those 4 in mind. They are the absolute heroes of the solution we're about to get into.
Now, these weren't just any old councils sitting around. They were all really active in something called the Road Warden Scheme. This is basically a program where trained local folks are given the green light to go out and handle minor repairs on public roads themselves. So you see, the desire to help was absolutely there. They were ready, willing, and eager to get stuff done for their communities. But, and there's always a but, isn't there? This is where they hit a huge wall. See, to do this kind of work safely on the highways, you need special signs, you need specific equipment. The county had all this gear, and you could technically borrow it from one of 5 depots. The catch? The depots were often totally inaccessible. This just made it impossible for the councils to react quickly to what their residents needed. It was a classic case of good intentions getting tangled up in red tape.
So you've got this frustrating roadblock. They could have just thrown their hands up and said, well, we tried, but they didn't. And this is where the story gets really, really good. They decided that if the system wasn't going to work for them, they'd just create a new one.
And this quote pretty much says it all. It was their big aha moment. They realized, hey, on our own, we're stuck. But what if we team up? What if we pool our resources, apply for a grant together, and then just buy our own equipment to share? Just like that, they could completely sidestep the whole depot problem. Brilliant.
And what's so cool is that this wasn't just some vague idea. No, they laid out a super clear 3-step plan. Step 1, make it official. Form a real partnership. Step 2, go after a specific grant, the town and parish fund. And step 3, use that money to buy their own shared set of gear. So simple, so logical, and as we'll see, so incredibly effective.
Okay, so they got the grant money, they bought the equipment, mission accomplished, right? Well, not quite, because now you have a new problem. When you own stuff together, you've got to figure out how to manage it so everything stays fair. They knew they needed some clear rules of the road.
And that's exactly what they did. They put together an agreement. Now, don't picture some 100-page legal document full of jargon. Think of this more like the official playbook for their team, the essential rules that would make sure their partnership was a success in the real world. Let's actually walk through this agreement because the details are just so smart. First up, ownership. The gear is owned by all 4 councils jointly. Simple. Nobody owns it more than anyone else. Then, costs. Everyone chips in the same amount for any upkeep or repairs. Totally fair. Next, liability.
This is a big one. Whichever council is borrowing the equipment is responsible for it if it gets lost or damaged. That makes everyone extra careful. Then there's insurance. The person actually towing the trailer has to have it covered by their own insurance. Smart. For logistics, they have a central clerk who handles all the bookings, so access is fair and organized. And finally, what if they disagree? Under disputes, if they can't decide on something with a majority vote, a neutral officer steps in to settle it. They really thought of everything.
So the bottom line is, the system worked. It worked unbelievably well. But the story doesn't stop there. The success of this tiny, local project started to create a ripple effect that went way beyond just those 4 towns.
Yeah, this wasn't some quiet little win that nobody noticed. The fact that this partnership was getting things done and getting them done fast really started to catch the attention of the people in charge.
And here it is, the grand finale. As a direct result of this partnership's success and their feedback, a brand new grant was created, the Self-Help Grant Scheme. Their model was so good, it actually inspired a change in policy. It created a new pathway to help other councils do the exact same thing. Think about that. They didn't just solve their own problem, they created a blueprint that could help everyone.
And that really brings our story to a close. It's just such a powerful reminder that sometimes the absolute best answers to big, messy problems are small, local, and built on teamwork. It really just leaves you with one big question to chew on. When you look at the challenges in your own community, what could you and your neighbors achieve if you all work together? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.
I'm Pete Smurden. I'm Joint Snow Warden for the parish of Rattery in South Devon. Rural communities, I think, are always prepared to help themselves, simply because, if you're away from a larger centre of population, you have to. So this scheme has, I think, lends itself very well to remote villages. Because we're only volunteers, we can't sort of turn out at 3 o'clock in the morning, and start preventive gritting, but we're ready if we do get ice that does form. We're well prepared, I think. The machine's ready to go. It's obviously only a small machine, so it's not going to deal with colossal amounts of snow and ice, etc. But for a village like ours, we think it's it'll do the job.
Cooperation was on the agenda for the Shrewsbury Area Committee meeting on the 26th of June. Councillor Rob Wilson, who leads Shrewsbury Town Council, shared the new team's focus areas and the challenges they've faced. One notable challenge was when Shropshire Council didn't clear the walking and cycling path on Roman Road, prompting the Town Council staff to take matters into their own hands. This hands-on approach has become a hallmark of the Council's efforts to get things done. Councillor Wilson also introduced the Stepping Up team, which aims to fill gaps where Shropshire Council or other groups, such as Network Rail and Housing Plus, haven't been able to deliver. The focus is on keeping services running smoothly and improving them wherever possible. In addition to maintaining services, Councillor Wilson mentioned the potential for the Town Council to offer more services in the town centre, using their resources more effectively. He expressed openness to cooperating with other parish councils to share services and work together for the benefit of the community.
During an open discussion, the chairman highlighted a letter from the deputy leader sent to all parish and town councils, seeking feedback. Councillor Thorne suggested that the town council could manage the square, especially given the high costs of hiring it for community events. He also raised concerns about funding for services that Shropshire Council hasn't fully delivered. Councillor Davies echoed the sentiment that the town council is stepping up but expressed concerns about having enough personnel and whether Shropshire Council is doing its fair share. Councillor Wilson explained that due to budget constraints, the town council has had to act. Councillor Wagner suggested that all parish councils could work together to manage central area responsibilities, provided everyone is on board. Councillor Evans agreed, stating that now is the time for serious discussions about better collaboration among central area parish councils.
So, what happens when a police force, out of the blue, finds an £8 million hole in its budget? Well, that's exactly what just happened to West Mercia Police. We're going to break down a really important letter they sent out to community partners that shows just how this crisis happened and, what it means for everyone.
Right, let's just put the main number out there, £8 million. And to be clear, this isn't some forecast for next year. Nope. This is a gap that has suddenly opened up in the current budget. It's happening right now, and it needs to be fixed like yesterday.
Okay, so what makes this £8 million gap such a huge deal? Well, the letter points out that the force had already been taking what they call significant steps to balance their books. They really thought they had it all under control, which is what makes this sudden discovery such a massive, serious setback.
And the key phrase here, you got to understand, is in-year shortfall. That means the money is missing from the budget that they are operating on right this second. It's not a problem for next year's spreadsheets, it's a hole in the bank account today. And that means some immediate and probably very difficult decisions have to be made. So how on earth does a police force suddenly find itself £8 million in the red? Well, the letter makes it really clear this wasn't just one mistake. It was more like a cascade of pressures all building up at once, a real perfect storm.
What the letter lays out is really a classic financial squeeze. On one side, the funding they're getting just doesn't go as far as it used to, thanks to inflation. On the other side, public demand for police services is actually going up. And then, the real kicker, the cost of their own workforce suddenly became a huge, unexpected problem.
And you can really see these two powerful forces working against the police budget. Government funding, for one, just isn't keeping up with the rising cost of, well, everything, from gas for the cars to basic equipment. And at the exact same time, the need for police is growing. It's the classic case of being asked to do more with way less buying power. But while all those external things were creating a really tough environment, the letter reveals the situation was, and this is their word, exacerbated by a major internal miscalculation. This was the thing that tipped it over the edge from a difficult situation into a full-blown urgent crisis.
And here it is. The single biggest reason for that £8 million shortfall wasn't some flashy new project or a massive equipment failure. No, it came down to the most fundamental cost in policing: the officers themselves. Put simply, the force's payroll ended up being significantly higher than they'd budgeted for.
Okay, so here's where things really went off the rails. The budget was all based on a calculated average cost for each officer. But here's the reality. After a recent big recruitment push, or uplift, the force now has more experienced senior officers who've reached the very top of their pay scales. And that seemingly small miscalculation, when you multiply it across the entire workforce, is what created this massive, multi-million-pound gap.
All right, so you've got this £8 million hole in the budget. The leadership obviously had to act fast. The letter also lays out exactly how they're responding and what their strategy is for managing this crisis.
The very first thing the police and crime commissioner and the chief constable did was put out this really powerful statement. They wanted to make it crystal clear that, hey, despite all this financial chaos, their core mission to fight crime and keep people safe is, as they put it, non-negotiable. That's the bottom line.
And along with that promise, they laid out a pretty clear action plan.
They're being totally open with their own staff and with the public, but they're also admitting that some difficult decisions are coming. And crucially, they've taken this to a higher level, appealing directly to the Home Office to highlight the incredible financial strain that they and probably other forces are under.
But their response isn't just about internal damage control. The letter finishes with a really critical, forward-looking message aimed at the very people they sent it to in the first place, their community partners. So this letter doesn't just lay out a problem, it actually proposes a solution. And that solution is all about collaboration. They explicitly say that partnership is essential, and they're looking for new ways to create joint investment to help the community. So this isn't just an FYI, it's basically an invitation to work together.
And that really leaves us with a much bigger question, doesn't it? What's happening in West Mercia is a pretty stark reminder of the intense financial pressure public services everywhere are facing. As all the traditional funding gets stretched thinner and thinner, it really makes you wonder, is this kind of direct appeal for partnerships and joint investment not just an option anymore, but the actual future for keeping our community safe?
Have you ever stopped maybe walking through your local park and just thought about how it all works? You know, the kept lawns, the tidy roadsides, those community centers that are just sort of there?
It's easy to overlook, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
A lot of that background work, the stuff that keeps things ticking over, that's often down to local councils. And, well, sometimes the way they manage it involves some pretty smart thinking.
Absolutely. Delivering those services consistently, especially right down at that really local level, it takes, well, a surprising amount of planning and strategy.
Yeah, exactly. So today for our deep dive, we're going to get into a really interesting discussion document. It's all about parish councils, which for anyone maybe not familiar, they're like the smallest, most local tier of council in many areas of the UK. Kind of your first point of contact, civically speaking.
Right on your doorstep, managing those very tangible everyday services.
Precisely. And this document looks at how they deliver those services, especially how they might work together to handle challenges and keep their communities, well, thriving.
So our mission really is to unpack the main questions this document raises. And it's all centered around this idea of partnership working.
Partnership working. Okay.
Yeah, how parish councils might team up with each other, but also, and this is key, how they might collaborate with bigger bodies, like Shropshire Council, that's the main county authority handling things like schools, social care.
A unitary authority for the area.
Exactly. And the whole point, as the document lays out, is about sharing resources, finding cost savings where possible, and just making sure essential local services can actually continue, especially when money's tight.
Okay, so we need to look at why they're suggesting this, right? What's the motivation? And what kind of services are we actually talking about? And then I guess the practical side, what does this mean for how local government actually runs?
That's it. Getting a clearer picture of the strategic thinking that keeps our local areas going, even under pressure.
Right. So where does the document kick things off? It seems to start with a pretty fundamental question for the parish councils themselves.
It does. It asks them quite directly. Would your parish council agree with the rationale for some form of partnership working with other parishes to deliver services common to parishes?
So neighbor to neighbor, basically, that first step.
That's the foundation, and the rationale they give is crystal clear. Sharing expertise and potential cost savings.
Sharing expertise, cost savings. Makes sense.
Well, think about it. For these often quite small local councils, each with its own budget, maybe limited staff, pooling resources, sharing knowledge, it's not just a nice to have. It can make them much more efficient, much more capable.
So like one parish might have someone who's brilliant at, I don't know, grant applications, and another is struggling.
Exactly. Or maybe one is invested in some expensive bit of kit, like a heavy-duty mower or something that another parish could never afford alone. Sharing it makes sense. It kind of levels the playing field a bit.
Democratizes capability, you could say. Stops quality just being about how much money an individual parish has.
That's a great way to put it. And the document, helpfully, gives concrete examples. It doesn't just stay theoretical.
Which is good. So what sort of things?
It specifically flags up things like cemeteries, grounds maintenance, and verge cutting.
Okay, so really visible stuff, not obscure back office functions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The things people see every day that affect how the place looks and feels, the state of the local park, the cemetery where relatives might be buried, even just how tidy the roadside verges are.
No more patchwork quilt of neatly trimmed next to overgrown, hopefully.
Well, that's the idea. Achieve a more consistent standard, use the resources better. If one parish has that new mower, but only uses it, say, 2 days a month.
Why not share it with the neighbor who's struggling with an old one?
Precisely. Or maybe sharing admin staff for something like cemetery management, or using the same IT system. It cuts down overheads for everyone involved. It's about leveraging that collective power.
So if you're listening, think about your own area. The park, the local churchyard, the roadsides. If councils work together on these, it could mean, well, more consistency, better quality maybe.
And potentially, your local taxes going further. Less duplication, smarter use of equipment and people. It all adds up to a better maintained local environment. A visible sign of working smarter together.
Okay, so that's the first layer, parishes working with other parishes. But then you said the document goes deeper.
It does. It moves on to explore, a potentially more complex type of partnership. It asks about some form of partnership working with Shropshire Council and other parishes to deliver discretionary services.
Okay, so now bringing in the bigger player, Shropshire Council, and focusing on discretionary services. What exactly does that mean in this context?
Right, so discretionary services are basically the ones councils aren't legally required to provide, unlike, say, waste collection or road maintenance, which are statutory duties. But, and this is the crucial bit, these discretionary services are often the things that really add to community life. Things like local arts initiatives, maybe community transport schemes vital for people in rural areas, or specific youth clubs or support services. The extras that make a place more than just functional.
The quality of life stuff.
Exactly. And the reason this partnership model is suggested for these services is explicitly stated. It's to deliver services which otherwise may be curtailed or withdrawn due to financial pressures.
So this isn't just about being more efficient. It's potentially about saving services that are at risk of disappearing altogether because the main council budget is squeezed.
Precisely. It's about preservation in the face of cuts. These discretionary services, because they're not legally mandated, are often the first things on the chopping block when budgets get tight at the county level.
That puts a different spin on it. So discretionary sounds a bit misleading, then these things might be vital for the community's character, its social fabric.
They absolutely can be. And the document pushes parishes to think proactively. It asks them, what services, in addition to any already being delivered, would you be willing to help deliver?
So it's asking them to step up, identify gaps left by potential county cuts, and say, okay, maybe we can take that on.
Yes. It shows real local initiative, but you're right to imply there's another side.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a potentially significant extra burden for these smaller parish councils, doesn't it? More responsibility, maybe more cost.
It's a definite balancing act. On one hand, it's local communities taking ownership to keep valued services running. On the other, yes, it absolutely shifts responsibility and potentially the financial strain downwards.
So connecting this for the listener, this kind of partnership could be the difference between keeping, say, that vital community bus route going or losing it.
It really could. Imagine that bus is a lifeline for older residents or people without cars in isolated villages. If Shropshire Council says, sorry, we can't afford this anymore, a partnership involving local parishes might be the only hope to keep it on the road. That's the kind of critical service preservation we could be talking about.
It sounds potentially crucial then, but let's get practical. Taking on more, even if it's vital, costs money, needs people, resources. Does the document address that?
It does, thankfully. It asked a very direct, very necessary question. What extra resources do you think your parish might need to achieve this?
Okay, good. Because good intentions don't pay the bills or drive the bus.
Exactly. And resources here isn't just about cash, though obviously funding is a huge part. It could mean needing more staff time, maybe specialist equipment they didn't need before.
Training, perhaps? For counselors or volunteers taking on new tasks?
Absolutely. Or just extra administrative support to handle the workload. Maybe even new IT systems to coordinate things between the different partners. Asking this question shows they recognize that successful collaboration needs real, tangible investment and support. It can't just be done on goodwill alone.
Without that support, the whole thing could just fall apart.
It could easily just add unsustainable pressure.
Right. And if you start changing who delivers what, surely that messes with the existing structures, the committees and working groups already in place. You can't just add new jobs onto old systems without thinking it through.
That's another critical point the document raises. It specifically asks, what might be the impact of any changes on the need for a met and structure of any area committee or joint working group?
Okay, area committees, joint working groups. What are those broadly? Like coordination bodies?
Yeah, often there are existing groups that might cover several parishes or coordinate specific types of work across an area. They're part of the current governance setup.
So the document is asking basically, if we start doing things differently, do these old committee structures still make sense?
Pretty much. Do they need to change? Do we need new structures? Successful partnerships might mean tweaking these existing groups or maybe even scrapping them and starting fresh to avoid, say, duplication of effort or confusing lines of responsibility.
You need clarity on who's doing what, who's reporting to whom, especially when multiple councils are involved.
Absolutely. If you don't adapt the structure, the new way of working could just get tangled up in the old bureaucracy. Efficiency goes out the window.
So what this tells us, really, is that making these partnerships work isn't just about finding the money or agreeing on the service. It's also about the nuts and bolts of organization.
Yes, it shows the depth of thinking needed. Adapting the governance structure is just as vital as securing the funding. It highlights that keeping local services running smoothly involves this complex, ongoing organizational effort behind the scenes.
Okay, so as we kind of pull this all together, let's just quickly recap what we've dug into from this discussion document.
Sure. We've basically seen two main flavors of partnership being explored. First, that collaboration between parishes for common day-to-day services like grounds maintenance or cemeteries.
Right, neighbor helping neighbor. And then the second type, broader partnerships involving the bigger county council, like Shropshire Council, specifically aimed at protecting those discretionary services.
The ones that add so much to community life, but are vulnerable to cuts. And the drivers behind all this are pretty clear. Trying to be more efficient, saving costs where possible.
And, crucially, that proactive step by local communities to try and preserve services that might otherwise vanish due to those wider financial pressures.
It's fundamentally about getting the most impact from limited resources and making sure local needs don't fall through the cracks.
And we also touched on the really practical side, the need to figure out what extra resources are actually required. Not just money, but staff, equipment, training.
And the equally important need to look at the existing structures, the committees and groups, and adapt them so they actually support these new collaborative ways of working rather than hinder them.
It really shows the level of strategic thinking that has to happen, even at the most local level. These aren't easy fixes.
No, they require a lot of thought, real collaboration, and a willingness to adapt from everyone involved.
Definitely. So maybe next time you're out and about and you see that park looking good, or you hear about a local community transport scheme still running, just pause for a second.
Yeah, consider the layers of partnership and strategic planning that might be going on, completely unseen behind the scenes.
Think about what collaborations might already exist where you live. And maybe even consider, how could these ideas, communities taking charge, sharing resources, adapting how they organize themselves, how could that apply to other challenges we face together, way beyond just local council services?
It's a fascinating glimpse into the complex, always evolving world of local governance, all aimed at keeping our communities not just running, but actually thriving.
Show's over, show's over, show's over.